The film unfurls with Ivan meandering, slowly, amidst a field of flowers, his face clouded with contemplation. The subsequent scene unfolds in a bustling train station, where Ivan descends into the depths of the subway. The weariness of age weighs heavily upon him as he boards the train, and an old Mexican ballad echoes in his mind. Ivan speaks inwardly, revealing that he has had that dream again, a recurring reverie that haunts him incessantly. A flashback transports him to his youth, perched on the handlebars of his father's tamale cart, lost in reverie. But his happiness is interrupted as Marcos, his father, admonishes him with a sharp smack on the head to get his attention. The following scene finds Ivan reminiscing about wandering the nocturnal streets of Mexico. Yet now he finds himself alone in the subway station, making his way towards the exit, ruminating in his thoughts and questioning the enigmatic dream that leaves him drenched in sweat every time. In a cozy restaurant, Ivan dons his chef's attire with meticulous care, tying a crimson bandana around his head, inspecting his reflection in the mirror before stepping into his bustling kitchen. He moves with agile precision, darting into the alley to retrieve a weighty crate of supplies, hauling it back to the pantry, and unloading it with practiced efficiency. He plucks a jar of crema from the crate and hastily delivers it to the busy cooks, before returning to the dishwashing station to commence his duties. In the subsequent scene, Ivan ascends a narrow stairwell, cradling his slumbering son Ricky, whose face is adorned with painted cat-like features. They reach a dilapidated corridor and approach an apartment door, where Paula, his wife, greets them with a vague sense of annoyance, asking about their tardiness. Ivan explains that there were interminable lines. He steps into the modest apartment, where Paula's mother is busy packing food into plastic containers on the kitchen table. Ivan stands at attention, saluting his mother-in-law, and awkwardly holds Ricky in his arms, a sense of discomfort palpable in the air. He strides through the dimly lit living room, where Paula's father sits ensconced on the sofa, engrossed in an old Western flick. Ivan greets him courteously before making his way into a cramped, cluttered bedroom with 2 beds. Ivan attempts to lay Ricky down on his own bed, but the child clings tightly to his neck, unwilling to let go. With a touch of awkwardness, Ivan manages to lay Ricky down, only to have the boy spring up with a playful roar, his face adorned with tiger-like face paint. Ivan chuckles at his son's trickery, conceding defeat. He gently seats Ricky, fully intending to clean off the face paint. Just then, Paula enters the room, and Ivan expresses his gratitude to her for allowing him to spend time with his son. He eagerly inquires about when he can see Ricky again. But Paula pauses, her thoughts elusive. Finally, she mentions that Ricky needs new sneakers, a fact that Ivan acknowledges without hesitation. As they stand by the apartment's entrance, Ivan reaches into his pocket, producing some money, which he gives to Paula. She worries aloud if he has enough for the bus fare, but Ivan reassures her, affirming that he does. He promises to use his earnings from work to buy his son the much-needed shoes. With a deep breath, Ivan pauses at the threshold, taking in the chirping of the family parakeet in its small cage hanging by the door before departing. In the ensuing scene, Ivan diligently sweeps the well-trodden floor of the bustling restaurant, all the while casting curious glances towards the flurry of activity in the kitchen. His inquisitive nature gets the better of him, and he seizes an opportunity to engage with Beto, one of the skilled cooks, who is putting the finishing touches on a sumptuous chicken with mole dish. With a raised brow, Ivan queries Beto about the time-honored method of using a mortar and pestle. Beto, with unwavering conviction, nods, proudly displaying his culinary expertise. Yet, Ivan harbors a different notion in his mind. He proceeds to impart culinary advice passed down from his father, unveiling a technique that involves utilizing a blender immediately after searing the tomatoes. Beto listens attentively, intrigued by Ivan's innovative approach. Just as their conversation reaches a tantalizing crescendo, Ivan's boss storms into the kitchen in a flurry, urgently beseeching Ivan to attend to a broken toilet handle that requires immediate attention. With dutiful deference, Ivan acknowledges his boss's request and hastily makes his way to the bathroom, leaving his captivating conversation with Beto unresolved. Ivan deftly repairs the toilet, and as he sees his boss heading for the exit, he realizes it's now or never. He summons the courage to approach his boss and proudly announces that he has fixed the issue. He kindly reminds his boss of the promised kitchen position, which was to be bestowed upon him once Pedro departed. However, to his dismay, his boss explains that he had already given the job to his recently returned nephew. Ivan's crestfallen countenance speaks volumes as he expresses his disappointment, citing his year-long wait and culinary diploma. But his boss dismisses it with a mere wave of his hand, commanding Ivan to be grateful for his current job and to exercise patience. The conversation comes to an abrupt end, leaving Ivan disheartened, his hopes dashed. He stands there, a solitary figure in the bustling restaurant, pondering his uncertain future and the fleeting nature of promises. As the night deepens, Ivan, weary from the day's toil, kindles a cigarette to accompany him on his long journey homeward. Clutching a small satchel of sustenance from his labor, he traverses through the desolate streets of the town's outskirts. The dimly lit path leads him to a weathered apartment building, where he ascends the stairs with heavy steps. Yet, his reverie is abruptly interrupted as he catches sight of a familiar figure on the landing above. Sandra, adorned with a resplendent smile, stands before him, filling his heart with elation. He ascends the stairs with renewed vigor, eager to be in her presence. Inside the apartment, Ivan attends to his fatigued countenance at the bathroom sink, while Sandra graces his bed, observing him intently. Ivan, seeking to make the moment special, retrieves a modest bottle of tequila from the kitchenette and pours 2 shots, preparing to toast to their reunion. However, his keen eyes discern a bruise adorning Sandra's delicate visage. He caresses it gently, inquiring if she has parted ways with the man who caused it. Sandra deflects, shifting the conversation to reminiscing about their neighbor Janeth back in Mexico and her escapades. Their gazes lock, memories of their beloved ad for Manzanilla Grissi, a Mexican hair dye, flooding their minds. They clink their glasses, saluting that cherished memory. Sandra suggests venturing out, and Ivan plucks a button from a makeshift clothesline in his room, ready to accompany her into the night, eager to relish every moment in the company of his dear Sandra. They venture forth, traversing the threshold of an abandoned manor. As they step inside, faint echoes of pulsating 90 seconds dance music reach their ears from afar. A colossal statue of Jesus looms above them, and they are greeted by a sight of men indulging in flirtation, revelry, and the clandestine ambience of this hidden haven. Warm glances of recognition are cast their way as Ivan and Sandra make their way further into the depths of the aged edifice. At the bar, Sandra and Ivan partake in fiery tequila shots, as Ivan endeavors to maintain an air of nonchalance. Suddenly, an agitated crimson light dances upon his leather-clad frame, and he looks down at his hand to discover the source. A laser pointer adorns Gerardo's hand, swiftly concealed upon noticing their gaze. Sandra is quick to voice her admiration for Gerardo's handsomeness, prompting a smile from the elusive figure before he vanishes from sight. Ivan takes a fortifying gulp of tequila, rises from his seat, and heads towards the bathroom. There, he finds Gerardo, and the two lock eyes, each trying to recall where they may have crossed paths before. Ivan is taken aback, realizing that Gerardo seems to possess knowledge about him that he is yet unaware of. Gerardo's gaze scrutinizes Ivan, sizing him up, as if seeking to unravel his identity. The air is charged with tension, and Ivan anxiously anticipates Gerardo's next words. Unexpectedly, Ivan erupts into laughter, finding Gerardo's anecdotes amusing. Gerardo reveals his own challenges in Chiapas, which he managed to surmount. Ivan playfully taunts Gerardo, jesting that he could have coached him through those trials if they had been acquainted back then. Gerardo probes Ivan about his apparent lack of conflicts with others, to which Ivan confidently asserts his adeptness at handling himself. Gerardo makes a remark about Ivan's skill in navigating through adversity, and Ivan chooses to let it slide without further retort. Later, we see Ivan and Gerardo finding themselves alone on the rooftop, finally free from prying eyes. Ivan regales Gerardo with the tale of his culinary journey, recounting his journey to Puebla in search of gastronomic knowledge. He speaks of his arrival at a convent that guarded the coveted secrets of the original recipe for chiles en nogada, despite initially being turned away by a nun. Ivan persisted, offering a generous donation of 1,000 units of currency, only to be refused at first, until the nun returned with an offer of 2,000 units. Ivan and Gerardo exchange knowing glances, and in the radiant hues of the setting sun, Ivan leans in, bestowing upon Gerardo a languid, momentous, and euphoric kiss. They are the sole denizens of the bar, with the world beyond the door of Puebla stirring to life. Ivan confides to Gerardo that he must depart, and when Gerardo inquires about obtaining Ivan's contact details, Ivan reveals he possesses no phone. Gerardo queries whether they shall meet again, to which Ivan agrees before swiftly departing, leaving the door to the mansion slightly ajar. Gerardo is left in solitude. In the ensuing scene, Ivan is amidst the vegetable market, meticulously selecting verdant peppers and savoring the arils of a pomegranate. The vendor places the peppers in a plastic bag and offers it to Ivan, who remunerates him before departing. Later, in his humble kitchen, Ivan is glimpsed dexterously chopping tomatoes and searing green chilies on an improvised gas stove. We eavesdrop on a conversation between Ivan and his mother, Rosa Maria, over the phone. She inquires after his well-being and asks him to regale her with details of his romantic interests, yet Ivan dismisses her queries. Ivan has painstakingly prepared a culinary masterpiece for Gerardo, adorning 2 pristine plates of chiles en nogada with a garnish of fresh pomegranate arils. Gerardo watches, captivated, as Ivan awaits his verdict with bated breath. Subsequently, Gerardo reclines on the bed, lost in reverie of his wondrous afternoon, pondering the enigmatic allure of Ivan. In a moment of reminiscence, Ivan finds himself seated at an improvised table amidst a desolate parking lot, ready to sell his tamales. His father, Marcos, indulges in a swig of rum from a bottle, displaying flamboyant behavior as he takes up a megaphone to address the crowd. Ivan, though outwardly smiling, is inwardly discomfited by his father's antics. Later, in the cramped confines of the kitchen, Ivan laboriously prepares the tamales, while his mother, Rosa Maria, delicately sews the final touches on a frilly yellow dress. Ivan approaches her sewing room with awe, marveling at the finished garment, but his mother chides him softly, slapping his hand away, citing his dirty hands. Ivan, still a child at heart, expresses his desire for a similar dress, only to be rebuffed by his mother, who asserts that such attire is exclusively for girls, urging him to abandon childishness. Rosa Maria quiets Ivan's baby sister, Rosie, as he presents her with a basket of tamales. She bestows a kiss upon him, whispers a brief prayer, and departs. Soon after, Sandra careens uncontrollably on roller skates, losing her balance and landing face first. Ivan, observing from a window in his abode, chuckles at the spectacle and calls out to her, inquiring about her well-being. Undeterred by the fall, Sandra picks herself up, looks up at Ivan with a cheerful countenance, and implores him to wait for her. Ivan emerges from the doorway, holding the yellow dress, which instantly captivates Sandra upon laying eyes on it. Ivan, sporting a mischievous grin, proceeds to adorn Sandra's face with copious amounts of 80-second style makeup, while he himself slips into the yellow dress. Gazing at his reflection in the mirror, Ivan approves of the transformation, pleased with what he sees. Next, Gerardo, in pensive repose, sits at his desk, idly toying with a crimson laser pointer as his students diligently complete their exams. Through the classroom's window, Gerardo catches sight of his comrade Cucusa, beckoning him to join. Without hesitation, Gerardo collects the completed exams from his pupils and heeds Cucusa's call. Soon, Gerardo and Cucusa find themselves strolling near the illustrious Plaza Victoria. Their attention is drawn to a display adorned with resplendent wedding gowns and sparkling tiaras. Cucusa's eyes gleam with excitement at the sight of the tiaras, and she ventures inside to inquire about the prices. Alas, the shopkeeper curtly rebuffs them, informing them that the shop is closing. Gerardo and Cucusa understand the message, loud and clear. As they depart from the shop, Gerardo's attention is momentarily diverted as he spots someone. Gerardo's gaze fixes on Ivan, who holds a buoyant balloon, with his son Ricky perched contentedly on Paula's lap, embodying the image of a traditional father. Ivan notices Gerardo's piercing stare and freezes. With measured steps, Gerardo and Cucusa approach Ivan and his family, taking their time as they pass by. In the subsequent scene, within the dressing room of a clandestine gay nightclub, the walls are marred with peeling paint, as performers prepare for their shows. In the main dressing room, Cucusa undergoes a stunning metamorphosis, transforming into a resplendent blonde woman. On the stage, a man delivers an esoteric roller skating performance, accompanied by two shirtless youths. Afterwards, Cucusa makes a grand entrance, gracefully gliding down a long corridor towards the stage, ready to captivate the audience with her performance. She delivers a soulful song, lip-syncing with finesse, while the enraptured crowd cheers her on. Gerardo, holding a beer, wades into the throng, drawn in by the electric atmosphere. In due course, Cucusa culminates her act with a flourish, and the crowd erupts into ecstatic applause. Later, as Gerardo exits the venue with Monty, he finds Ivan standing across the street. Gerardo strides over to him, and as fate would have it, the bus arrives. Gerardo informs Ivan that it is his bus, extending an invitation to join him. As they sit side by side on the bus, Gerardo inquires about Ivan's circumstances, probing to see whether his partner is aware of his true essence. Ivan, fraught with trepidation, shakes his head, unwilling to reveal his true self in a society bound by oppressive norms. He confides in Gerardo, expressing his fear of losing access to his own son should his partner discover his hidden truth, for his partner holds the power to make such decisions. Gerardo offers sympathy, and Ivan, plagued by uncertainty about the future, acknowledges the necessity of securing a higher-paying job to support himself and his son, a foundation upon which to build his aspirations. He contemplates crossing over, perhaps to a different realm, when Gerardo, with a hint of complexity, admits his sentiments as a potential partner. They fall into a poignant silence, gazing at each other, and the scene shifts to a local carnival, where children and families revel in the twinkle of blinking lights. Ivan watches his son Ricky joyfully ride the carousel, waving at his father. Though Ivan smiles, his mind seems elsewhere. Amidst the festivities, a birthday celebration ensues, with pink and white balloons adorning the modest courtyard. The young girl, dressed in a resplendent pink gown, dances with her chamberlains, dapper in their tuxedos. Ivan and Paula observe, with Ricky joining in the revelry, dancing with the guest of honor, amid laughter and applause. Ricky returns to his parents, beaming with pride, as they all share cake at a humble folding table. However, Ivan's ennui is palpable amidst the festivities. Outside, Gerardo waits surreptitiously, ensuring no one catches sight of him. Inside, the dance party continues in full swing, and Ivan catches a glimpse of Gerardo, prompting hasty goodbyes as he rushes to leave. Paula catches Gerardo's presence outside, adding to the tension. The following morning, Ivan and Gerardo disembark from a bus and traverse a pristine field, backpacks in tow. The breathtaking view of majestic mountains surrounds them as they pass through a herd of cows, making their way to Gerardo's family ranch, setting the stage for a new chapter in their journey. In due course, Gerardo and Ivan find themselves inside the abode, ensconced in the living room. Gerardo's mother, Magda, approaches them with a parcel wrapped in grandiose fashion, brimming with anticipation. She implores her son to close his eyes in eager anticipation. Gerardo complies, and as he unwraps the gift, he reveals a resplendent robe crafted from plush red velvet. His countenance brims with delight as he dons the garment, modeling it with aplomb. Magda and Ivan are both taken aback by Gerardo's sartorial splendor, and as they exchange glances, stifling laughter, the air is charged with mirth. The scene then shifts to an attic, its ceiling oppressively low, bathed in daylight that streams through the apertures in the rough cinder block walls. A modest mattress and a diminutive chest of drawers, worn by the passage of time, grace the space. Ivan's fingers grace the keys of a dusty toy piano, producing a few forlorn notes. As he rummages through the drawers, he unearths relics from Gerardo's past. With care, he places an old pair of glasses on Gerardo's nose, conjecturing that this was where Gerardo spent his afternoons. He adorns Gerardo's wrist with a beaded bracelet that once belonged to an old lady. Their reverie is interrupted by commotion from below, as the sounds of an argument permeate the air. Gerardo and Ivan crouch low, peering cautiously to discern the source of the turmoil. Yet, Gerardo's desire remains undeterred, as he pays no heed to the discord and instead bestows fervent kisses upon Ivan, intent on undressing him. Ivan, however, whispers anxiously in Gerardo's ear, apprehensive of being caught by his father. Gerardo assuages his fears, asserting that his father is too feeble to ascend the stairs. With a deft hand, Gerardo unzips Ivan's trousers, and they engage in a passionate embrace, lost in the throes of their fervent desire. In his chamber, Ivan dons his vestments in preparation for the banquet table. The air is abuzz with fervent activity as the table is adorned with fresh legumes, tortillas, and queso fresco. Gerardo, clad in a new robe of crimson velvet, exudes mirth and abundance. Suddenly, Cesar, Gerardo's father, and his elder brother make their regal presence known. Cesar extends his hand to Ivan, engaging in a vigorous, manly shake. Ivan endeavors to reciprocate with equal fervor, showing deference to his elder. Cesar partakes of the fare and inquires of his son about the state of the cows, revealing that the coffee has grown cold. Magda, in her efforts to maintain tranquility, takes the cup and withdraws to the kitchen, returning expeditiously with freshly brewed coffee, her swift movements a testament to her efficiency. The children are mute, keenly observing the scene before them, their young minds taking in the dynamics of the moment. Cesar asks Ivan about his occupation, but Gerardo hastily interjects, proclaiming Ivan to be a chef, only to correct himself and state that Ivan is but a cook. Ivan, with humility, claims to assist in the culinary domain, acknowledging his role with modesty. Gerardo's youngest sister jokes that maids usually perform dishwashing duties, a playful banter that hangs in the air. Cesar confirms the joke with a knowing smile, inquiring about their imminent departure. Ivan informs them that the morrow shall be the day of their parting, a somber note that dampens the mood. Magda expresses her disappointment. Her emotions are palpable, casting a sense of melancholy over the gathering. In the ensuing scene, Gerardo, distraught, traverses the corridors of the ancestral abode with a heavy heart. He enters his cherished bedroom from childhood and collapses onto the bed, overcome with emotion. His gaze fixates on the ceiling, triggering a flood of memories. He recalls a poignant flashback, where he slumbers innocently in his bed. A flatbed truck hurtles into the driveway just outside his window, its headlights piercing the room. Gerardo awakens, bewildered. His father, Cesar, emerges from the truck, leaving the passenger door ajar and the engine running. Cesar strides in, seizes young Gerardo with an unyielding grip, and forcibly drags him out of bed. Ignoring his son's pleas, Cesar hauls him through a side door and shoves him into the passenger seat of the truck. They set off, with Cesar driving recklessly on a treacherous dirt road, while Gerardo anxiously queries their destination. Cesar curtly admonishes him to be silent. Finally, they reach a desolate clearing. Cesar callously hurls Gerardo to the ground. With a resounding crack, Cesar lashes the earth with his belt, as Gerardo trembles in terror, tears streaming down his face. Cesar berates him, demanding to know why he behaves like a weakling, disparaging him as worthless. In a tumult of conflicting emotions, Cesar then abruptly returns to the truck, slams the door shut, and careens down the hill, disappearing into the distance. Gerardo is left alone in the darkness, lying on the frigid ground, utterly devastated. He rises, shell-shocked, and slowly descends the hill, caked in mud. Upon his return home, he enters, gazes into the mirror at his soiled countenance and matted locks. As tears course down his cheeks, he methodically cleanses his face, bringing the painful flashback to a close. Gerardo and Ivan, drenched by the pouring rain, alight from a taxi van and enter Ivan's abode. Their bags, remnants of their sojourn in Chiapas, are carelessly cast upon the bed. But Ivan's attention is drawn to the blinking red light on his answering machine. He presses the button, only to hear his landlord's voice inquiring about the overdue rent. Annoyed, Ivan swiftly silences the machine. Gerardo, ever the benevolent friend, offers to lend Ivan some money to settle the rent. But Ivan, in his vexation, declines the offer. Gerardo then produces a bottle of pox from his bag and procures 2 glasses from the kitchenette. Yet their reprieve is brief, for the doorbell rings, and Ivan's countenance changes. He peers down from his balcony and swiftly retreats, concealing his trepidation. In hushed tones, Ivan confides in Gerardo that his mother has arrived, accompanied by his child and Paula. Gerardo suggests that Ivan introduce him as a mere colleague from work, a ruse to allay any suspicions. Ivan dons his sandals, opens the door, and steps out, only to find his mother, Paula, and Ricky standing outside, drenched by the rain. His concern is immediately drawn to Ricky, who sports a small plaster cast on his hand, the result of an accident at school. Ivan apologizes for his absence, explaining that he was unexpectedly summoned to Hidalgo by co-workers and regrets not informing them. But his explanation falls on deaf ears, as Rosa Maria, Ricky's mother, questions him pointedly. Paula, astute and suspicious, inquires about the broken bathroom, noticing Ivan's anxious demeanor. Rosa Maria, visibly distressed, insists on leaving despite Ricky's yearning for ice cream, casting a scornful look at Ivan. Desperate, Ivan attempts to stop them, but to no avail. They depart, leaving him alone with the furious Paula, who berates him for his inadequacy as a father. Ivan, crestfallen, makes no attempt to stop them as they vanish from sight. He slowly closes the door, weighed down by the weight of his failures. As he returns to the stairwell, Gerardo, who has overheard the ordeal, informs Ivan that he is departing for home. The air is heavy with regret, and Ivan is left to ponder the consequences of his actions, alone in his desolate apartment. In solitude, Ivan indulges in tequila, the amber liquid gliding down his throat in the dimly lit room. Caught in the reflection of the mirror, he reminisces about a time when he and Sandra were adorned in gaudy attire, their faces painted with ostentatious makeup. A memory of his father, Marcos, standing at the doorway flashes before his eyes, freezing him in place. Marcos approaches with an air of disdain, slowly closing the distance with Ivan. The pause that follows feels like an eternity, as Marcos demands Ivan to remove the dress. With a tender touch on Ivan's hair, Marcos suddenly pushes him back, brusquely, before departing. Returning to reality, Ivan walks with haste through the rain-drenched streets of Puebla. He enters a small store, surprising Sandra with his unexpected presence. It is clear that something is amiss, and Sandra approaches him with concern. They sit and talk, the weight of their conversation palpable in the air. In the next scene, Ivan stands resolute, washing dishes in a restaurant. Determination shines in his eyes as he carries out his task. Later, he finds himself in a local coffee shop, sitting in a corner with Gerardo. The expression on Gerardo's face is one of bewilderment as Ivan expresses his aspirations of becoming a chef and seeking better opportunities in California, where talent is truly appreciated. Gerardo insists that they are content where they are, but Ivan disagrees, feeling the need to forge ahead for Ricky and himself. Gerardo voices his concerns about the challenges of living in California, citing the perils of loneliness and potential risks. As they join a group of fellow migrants, the towering cactuses cast foreboding shadows over the desert. Ivan, Sandra, and the others stand nervously in silence. Soon, the coyote, their guide, opens the back of a large box truck, instructing them to follow. The group nods in assent. A man starts calling out names, and one by one, the migrants hand over their money and climb into the dark, dank confines of the vehicle. When it's their turn, Ivan and Sandra approach the coyotes, surrendering their funds. The man scrutinizes them, commenting disparagingly on Sandra's weight, claiming she won't make it. But both Ivan and Sandra insist she will. With the help of others, Sandra climbs into the dark container, and Ivan follows suit. The door shuts, enveloping them in silence as they question the gravity of their decision. In the ensuing scene, the motley crew traverses the arid desert, their formation a single file line. Sandra, burdened by exhaustion, trudges wearily, trailing behind Ivan, who diligently safeguards their rear. The urgency of their plight is palpable, as Sandra succumbs to sickness and fatigue, her feeble form faltering. Ivan, urging her to catch her breath, underscores the imperative to press onward, lest they be left behind. With words of encouragement, he assuages her fears and emboldens her resolve. Amidst the brush, a sudden clamor pierces the air as a helicopter emerges into view. The group freezes momentarily, then erupts into frantic motion, dashing helter-skelter. Ivan clasps Sandra's hand tightly, but in the pandemonium, he loses his grip. They all seek refuge in a tunnel, illuminated by the piercing lights of the helicopter that scans the area. Sandra arrives last, her shrieks betraying her terror. Overcome with exhaustion, she collapses into Ivan's embrace, her breath labored and her movements feeble. Ivan implores her to rise, but Sandra is incapacitated, unable to comply. One of the group members cautions that they cannot wait, lest they be captured. Ivan, panic-stricken, pleads with them to grant them a brief respite. A fellow migrant interjects, citing Sandra's perilous condition, but their leader dismisses the plea, warning of the consequences of delay. Reluctantly, the group departs, leaving Sandra behind. Ivan is seized by trepidation, torn between duty and love. Desperate, he implores Sandra to summon her strength, but her weakness prevails, and she begs him to leave her behind and save himself. Sandra closes her eyes, resigned to her fate. Ivan casts a longing gaze at the retreating group, then, overcome by emotion, kisses Sandra's brow and follows them, disappearing from view. Alone in the desolate tunnel, Sandra sheds a solitary tear, consumed by despair. Time seems to stand still until Ivan re-emerges, racing back to her side. Sandra looks up at him with weary eyes, tears streaming down her face. Ivan, consumed by remorse, seeks her forgiveness. They share a profound gaze, brimming with love, as Ivan holds her shoulders and reassures her that they will not perish in the unforgiving desert. The scene shifts to Sandra's agonizingly slow progress, with Ivan now dragging her along. She moans with each labored step, her suffering evident. Suddenly, Ivan's mind betrays him, and he begins to hallucinate, perceiving a red laser dot dancing on his neck and hand before settling on the ground. The once familiar desert landscape is now tainted with blood-red hues. Ivan looks to his side, only to find Sandra vanished. He starts to move, then runs through the surreal crimson desert, disoriented and plagued by confusion. The morning sun rises, casting its golden rays upon Ivan and Sandra, who lie slumbering on the rugged earth beneath a meager tree. In the distance, the faint hum of a car engine reaches Ivan's ears, stirring him from his restless sleep. His eyes snap open, and he springs to his feet, racing up a hill to catch a glimpse of a truck approaching on the road below. Desperation fuels his movements as he sprints with all his might, waving his hands frantically to halt the vehicle's progress. Jymna, behind the wheel of the truck, expresses both relief and concern upon seeing Ivan. His breath comes in ragged gasps as he asks about their whereabouts. Jymna informs him that they have arrived in the United States, a realization that overwhelms Ivan with a flood of emotions. He beseeches Jymna for a ride, anywhere, but she shakes her head, deeming it too perilous. Instead, she imparts directions, cautioning them to stick to the shoulder of a specific road for 40 minutes, evading the watchful eyes of immigration. She mentions St. Louis Middle School as their destination, where the janitor, Sid, will offer aid. Ivan pleads with Jymna once more, but she remains resolute in her decision to leave them be. However, she pulls out some weathered bananas, a simple brown paper lunch bag, and a jug of water, offering them to Ivan. With a nod of gratitude, Jymna departs, leaving Ivan and Sandra to continue their journey on foot. Through a retreating window, we see Ivan, utterly drained, trudging onward, gradually shrinking in the distance, a mere speck in the vast expanse. A poignant flashback ensues, taking Ivan back to a time when he squatted beside his beloved son Ricky in front of a building. A fleeting moment of embrace, a futile attempt to appear nonchalant, as Ricky clings to his father, refusing to let go. The anguish in Ivan's heart is palpable. Back in the present, on a subway train, Ivan sits among fellow passengers, his gaze fixed upon photos of his older son Ricky on his phone. Memories flood his mind, as he reminisces about Ricky's face, his features, and his scent. Ivan's voiceover echoes with a heartfelt letter to his son, describing how life's moments pass like fleeting flashes in a dream, emphasizing the ephemeral nature of human existence. In days of yore, when Ivan was in his youth, he sat in his meager abode, gently patting his damp locks with a towel. A photograph of him and Ricky was carefully tucked in the mirror, a relic of cherished memories. Donning his shirt, Ivan cast a swift glance at the distant skyline, a sprawling metropolis beckoning on the horizon. The scene shifts to Ivan toiling diligently, surrounded by other fellow immigrants, all engaged in the arduous task of scrubbing and hand-drying cars, braving the biting cold. Climbing a ladder with deft agility, Ivan used a long brush to meticulously wash the tops of the vehicles, the sweat on his brow a testament to his strenuous labor. Later, still clad in his work attire, Ivan approached the store's owner with a halting command of English, requesting phone cards. His eyes caught the sight of loose cigarettes on the counter, each priced at 50 cents. Ivan made a purchase and departed. The next scene revealed Ivan queuing up for a solitary payphone, patiently waiting his turn. As a woman exited the booth, he stepped in and dialed Gerardo's number. The disappointment in Gerardo's voice was unmistakable as he noted Ivan's tardiness of over an hour past their agreed-upon time. Ivan offered an explanation, citing the late finish at work. Gerardo inquired about Ivan's new job, and Ivan, putting on a facade of optimism, claimed that all was well, even regaling Gerardo with tales of his culinary prowess, mentioning the enchiladas he had cooked that had earned praise from the chef. Gerardo expressed pride, but Ivan's wistful admission of missing him revealed his true emotions. Gerardo gently reminded Ivan that he had been gone for over a year, and informed him of his own plans to join him in New York. However, Ivan's demeanor shifted, and he beseeched Gerardo to forget about him for a while, declaring that New York was not for him. With a heavy heart, Ivan hung up the phone and walked away from the booth, leaving Gerardo behind, lost in a swirl of emotions, as he disappeared into the bustling streets. In a later hour, within the subway's confines, Ivan boards a crowded train, his reflection gazing back at him with a sense of loss. The scene shifts to the American embassy in Mexico, where Gerardo stands behind the imposing iron gates, amidst a tense ambience, awaiting his turn in a lengthy queue. One by one, the applicants are granted entry. As Gerardo engages in discourse with the consular officer through the partition, he divulges his possession of a valuable abode worth $8,000 in Puebla and a cattle ranch in Chiapas that belongs to his family. The consular officer meticulously reviews Gerardo's application, inquiring about his occupation as a teaching assistant at the esteemed University of Puebla and his past international sojourns. Gerardo, with a tinge of disappointment, admits to never having traveled beyond Mexico's borders and having no kin or offspring residing in the United States. The consular officer's stamp comes down with a resounding thud, denying Gerardo's entreaty. Gerardo's countenance falls with a crestfallen expression as the consular officer swiftly calls forth the next petitioner. Later that night, Cucusa and Gerardo make their way homeward, with Gerardo inebriated and disheveled. He reaches for his phone, but fumbles in his intoxicated state. Cucusa takes the phone from him and stows it in her purse. Up ahead, a group of inebriated men approaches, setting their sights on Gerardo and Cucusa. Instead of avoiding confrontation, Gerardo confronts them. In the blink of an eye, fists are thrown, with Gerardo landing a single punch before succumbing to the men. Cucusa valiantly wields her purse as a makeshift weapon, but is ultimately overpowered and thrown to the ground. The drunken men laugh and move on, leaving Gerardo and Cucusa sprawled on the sidewalk, battered and bruised. In the subsequent scene, the sun sets over Gerardo's family ranch in Chiapas as he strides across the land with purpose. He engages in a hushed conversation with his mother, expressing his yearning to be reunited with Ivan. Later, as Magda slumbers on the sofa, Gerardo casts a fond gaze upon her, brimming with affection. Later, we find Ivan, braving the biting cold as he pedals his delivery bike, laden with plastic bags, across the bridge. Though the icy weather chills him to the bone, he perseveres, for he must work. The next morning, Ivan raps on a glass door. A boisterous dog bounds down the stairs, lunging at the glass. Startled, Ivan leaps back, until the door opens and the owner restrains the eager canine with a single hand. It is only then that Ivan gains entry. He descends into a dim basement, a cramped boarding house teeming with young immigrant women. Sandra emerges from the bathroom, toweling off her damp hair. They embrace, before retiring to her room, where she confides in him that she must soon depart for work. Ivan reaches into his messenger bag and presents her with a container of soup. Worry clouds Sandra's eyes. With urgency in her voice, Sandra recounts the plight of Janeth's friend, who was deported upon arriving at the airport during her vacation, painting a stark picture of the harsh treatment they endure in their current abode. Ivan seeks to console her, assuring her that this too shall pass. Yet Sandra remains disheartened, lamenting the discrimination they face and recalling her mother's disappointment over a used car she recently bought. She questions the feasibility of their relationship with Gerardo, pondering if he will wait for Ivan indefinitely. At a loss for words, Ivan is overcome with sorrow as he studies Sandra's pained expression. Despite her despondency, Sandra insists on leaving, while Ivan tries to muster the conviction that they came to this place with a purpose and must continue to strive towards it, despite the formidable challenges that beset them. In the ensuing act, Ivan emerges onto the cobblestone street, approaching his abode with measured strides. As he rounds the corner, his eyes alight upon Gerardo, seated on the stoop, clad in soiled garments, a backpack slung over his shoulder, bearing the marks of a harrowing experience. Ivan comes to an abrupt halt, his heart seizing with emotion. Gerardo rises to his feet, and the two men embrace, a poignant moment that lingers in time. Ivan draws back, his gaze fixed on Gerardo's countenance, his own eyes brimming with tears. Together, they ascend a flight of stairs, passing by a room where rough fellows indulge in smoking blunts. Finally, they enter Ivan's humble abode, dimly lit, and Gerardo takes it all in from the perch of the bed. In the subsequent scene, Gerardo clutches a Spanish-English dictionary in his hands, eager to learn. Ivan, with a patient demeanor, scribes each new word on a sticky note and affixes it to the window, their mutual thirst for knowledge propelling them forward. Gerardo then sits on the bed, meticulously counting a meager sum of coins and bills, their collective funds amounting to a modest $212. In the next act, Ivan, astride his delivery bicycle, traverses the bridge with a sense of purpose. He strides into the bustling kitchen of a restaurant, stealing glances at the bustling cooks as they toil. His eyes widen as an argument erupts among the culinary team, and he watches, transfixed. With resolve, Ivan steps forward, mustering his courage, only to be ignored by the chef, who is focused on his work. Undeterred, Ivan identifies himself as a graduate of a culinary school in Mexico, but the chef's response is dismissive, referring to him derisively as the delivery guy and hastily commanding him to don an apron and get to work. A fellow dishwasher offers an encouraging pat on Ivan's shoulder as he hurriedly suits up. A commanding voice calls out to him, and Ivan responds with alacrity, eager to prove himself. The chef assigns him the task of procuring a variety of fresh vegetables, including zucchinis, butternut squash, mushrooms, and finely chopped parsley. Ivan hesitates for a moment, taking in the instructions before darting off to fulfill the chef's orders. With fervor, he selects the vegetables, inspecting them carefully before returning to the kitchen. With deft skill, Ivan wields his knife, chopping the ingredients with precision, creating a culinary masterpiece that elicits awe. He meticulously cleans up his workstation, presenting his creation to the chef. The chef hastens over, examining Ivan's handiwork with interest. Later, Ivan emerges from the kitchen, finding solace on a bench, his chest heaving with a sense of accomplishment, as he breathes deeply, basking in the moment. While Gerardo slumbers, Ivan sits vigilantly beside him, casting a tender gaze upon his form. With a beam of light, Ivan's touch caresses various contours of Gerardo's body, assuring him of unwavering care. In the ensuing scene, a flashback transports us to a time when Ivan and Gerardo strolled hand in hand along the bustling streets, hearts brimming with delight. They beheld the spectacle of fireworks, their countenances aglow with crimson hues, a fleeting moment of pure bliss suspended in time. Soon after, Gerardo descends the stairs with fast steps, carrying a burden of soiled dishes in a bucket. During his respite, Ivan peers at a video message from Sandra on his handheld device, her voice conveying news of triumph in Chiapas and commending his culinary prowess. We then witness Ivan's deft culinary artistry as he adorns an array of exquisite Mexican delicacies, while Gerardo, resplendent in a velvet jacket, retrieves the plates with a beaming smile before hurrying off. Subsequently, the passage of 2 decades unfolds before our eyes, as Ivan and Gerardo navigate the vicissitudes of life and labor in the metropolis of New York. The montage chronicles their moments of mirth, managing a bustling restaurant, reveling at parties, frolicking with friends, proudly unfurling the rainbow flag, stealing kisses in public, delivering a whimsical runway performance, playing with their beloved canine in the snow, and joyously moving into a larger abode, all while staying connected with their families via video calls. The following scene portrays Ivan and Gerardo surveying the progress of their new restaurant's construction, their expressions suffused with admiration and satisfaction. Ivan ascends the ladder with meticulous care, his brush in hand, as he adorns the ceiling of the restaurant. The hustle and bustle of his employees fills the air, preparing the establishment for the day's guests. Pausing for a moment, Ivan surveys his surroundings with great contentment. In a different scene, captured on video, Ricky walks down the street with a visible air of frustration. He addresses his father through the lens of the camera, lamenting his recent visit to the embassy where his visa was denied. Weary from the strict requirements and lack of approval, Ricky questions his father's plans, pondering whether he intends to return or remain abroad indefinitely. Back in Ivan's restaurant, he dons his chef's jacket and ascends the stairs towards the kitchen. But his son's words echo in his mind. The memory of his son expressing that he hasn't seen him in 20 years weighs heavily on his thoughts as he pours his culinary expertise into crafting the finest dishes, all the while consumed by thoughts of his estranged child. Later, Ivan and Gerardo sit opposite each other, deep in conversation. Gerardo expresses his reluctance to return to Mexico, where opportunities are scarce, while Ivan remains silent, lost in contemplation. A sudden flashback interrupts the scene, as Gerardo closes a small travel bag and leaves the house, boarding a taxi to the central bus station. As the taxi pulls away, Gerardo catches a glimpse of his younger self in the rear-view mirror, dressed in a sharp blue suit. Startled, he turns to look out the back window, but the road is empty, devoid of any sign of his past self. Gerardo then grabs a rope and lowers himself over the side of a bridge, his movements slow and deliberate. However, his strength wanes, and he plummets to the ground, unable to hold on. The man who had been on the bridge with him throws Gerardo's backpack and flees. Another man comes to Gerardo's aid, helping him up despite his injured knee. Together, they make a frantic escape towards a tunnel, with Gerardo clutching his injured leg, his heart pounding in his chest. The motion picture transitions to unmasking the real individuals of those who have lived through the events to which we are witnesses in this movie. The grand opening celebration of their esteemed eatery ensues, and Gerardo, with a microphone in hand, takes center stage. Encouraged by a throng of friends, he addresses the gathered audience, brimming with exuberance and gratitude. He effusively expresses his appreciation, swiftly acknowledging the presence of his dear companions. With a nostalgic tone, he reminisces about bygone days, recalling familiar faces from years past. He mentions their shared toil in various restaurants, harking back even a dozen years ago, when they toiled as table cleaners. Despite still engaging in humble tasks, Gerardo takes pride in now serving patrons at their own tables. He attributes the success of the evening to Ivan's culinary artistry, and Ivan, beaming with pride, takes the microphone. He steps into the spotlight, overjoyed to witness the venue teeming with cherished friends. Ivan shares that their vision for the establishment was not limited to personal aspirations, but also encompassed their community, their loved ones, and even their fellow Mexicans seeking opportunities. He expresses heartfelt gratitude to all in attendance, and Gerardo interjects with a poignant toast to draw the curtain on this momentous occasion. In the ensuing scene, Ivan finds himself seated on a sofa, his phone clutched tightly in his hand, as he gazes at a video of his ailing father confined to a hospital bed, hooked up to a ventilator, with tubes protruding from every direction. Ivan's sister, Rosie, stands by his father's side. The video cuts off abruptly, and Ivan sets his phone down, consumed by the anguish of not being able to bid farewell to his beloved father. Next, Ivan lights candles on a makeshift altar he has meticulously erected in honor of his departed father. He gazes intently at the photograph of his late patriarch, lost in a reverie of memories and emotions. The subsequent scene unfolds in a solemn church, thronged with multitudes of people outside. Families and children meander about, and a priest takes the pulpit, leading the congregation in prayer. Ivan and Gerardo are amidst the gathering, listening attentively as the priest beseeches the Lord on behalf of their families back in their home countries. Ivan's distress is palpable as the priest continues, imploring hope and patience for their undocumented brethren, and the fortitude to endure the scourge of racism and injustice. Later, Ivan and Gerardo find themselves in a state of anxious anticipation, accompanied by a female immigration attorney. Their eyes are fixed on her, hanging on her every word, while her solemn nod seems to forebode unfavorable news. The lawyer, with empathy etched upon her countenance, elucidates the arduous reality of Ivan's predicament. His undocumented entry and illegal residency in the land, which renders a murky path for his son to join him, despite his commendable entrepreneurial endeavors and employees under his wing. In the confines of their apartment, Ivan and Gerardo sit in a somber silence, their visages weighed down by a torrent of emotions. Ivan's sense of despondency is palpable as he vocalizes his discontent, feeling trapped in a cage of circumstances. Gerardo, ever the voice of reason, offers solace, reminding Ivan that others have faced even graver challenges, and that they must persevere and press onward. Ivan bemoans the corrosive impact of their motherland on the sanctity of family bonds, deeming it unworthy. They exchange mournful glances, reminiscing about the halcyon days of their first encounter, when they lost themselves in each other's embrace, clasping each other's hands tightly. Subsequently, from the vantage point of a passing car, Ivan's mind wanders as the chaotic cityscape rushes by. He indulges in reverie, fantasizing about returning to Mexico, reminiscing about his youth, and navigating the labyrinthine alleys of street vendors. He recalls the cherished memories of riding on a tamale cart with his father, the sheer bliss etched on their faces as they careen around a corner. He recollects his mother's consoling embrace of his baby sister Rosie, and he and Sandra, dressed in finery with makeup adorning their countenances, dancing with unbridled abandon. But then, his reverie shifts to the day when Ivan bid farewell to Ricky, years ago, watching him vanish into the distance. Ivan reveals that sometimes his dreams and memories blur, leaving him confused. The subsequent scene depicts Ivan walking across a bridge, the above-ground subway roaring beside him on its tracks. He boards the subway, with Gerardo sitting beside him, and they share a tender look, a silent reassurance passing between them as they continue their journey together. The closing scene of the movie transports us to the bar, where Ivan and Gerardo, in the bloom of youth, stroll through the desolate manor, their hands intertwined. Ivan's mellifluous voiceover reflects on their inseparability and their aspirations for the days ahead. They come to a halt in the vestibule, indulging in a lingering and tender kiss. As they part, their eyes lock, bound by the unbreakable shackles of their affection. Ivan's voiceover persists, underscoring their indelible connection. Drawn from veritable accounts, our emotions are left in disarray, a union of enamored souls, and a chasm of separation between father and son.